If we have a quorum, we just might want to do something quick, one of the quick ones before Nick gets here. She said he's about 5 minutes.
CB4's position is they're shouldering the burden of financial activities.
All right, we're going to try to get started.
They're Pier 40, they've got all the activities.
Well, I can't do it until you sit down. You're the most important person.
Outside of largely Pier 40, they know that they're shouldering it.
All right.
So that's why they were opposed to not having this
All right.
more substantive.
Let's get going. Thank you all for coming. Happy New Year. And welcome to the CB1 Waterfront Parks and Cultural Committee meeting.
I'm a member of a cultural committee.
You are
the
member. I always wonder whether it's cultural or culture, but okay.
Cultural.
So I see. Okay, my name is Paul Goldstein. I'm the chair. This is...
Andrew Zelter, Vice Chair.
And Diana Sweetie. She is Director of Land Use and Planning. So thank you all for coming. Oh,
Right on time.
well, maybe we could go in order now, unless you need a minute or two.
I'm ready. I'm loaded for bear.
You're good to go? All right. Well, right on cue, we do have item number 1. For those who don't know who he is, this is Nick Sorbonne from Battery Park City Authority. Does a good job over there. And he's going to give us an update on those very important ball fields over at Battery Park City.
Thank you so much, and apologies, folks, for
No apologies.
being here a few minutes late. Hey, how are you? I've seen you 3 times in the last week, I think.
Wow.
You're a lucky man.
You need another job.
Yeah, it just shows you what means. No comment.
My family doesn't know I'm alive.
That's right. Yeah, in any event, thank you all. I'll give you a quick kind of overview generally for those who might be, for the uninitiated. Battery Park City, as you may know, is in the process of 4 interrelated resiliency projects, infrastructure resiliency projects, from the north of the neighborhood all the way down to the south. 3 are currently in flight, meaning in or at the design and engineering phase. 1 is forthcoming, the West Battery Park City Resiliency Project. But the north, the south, and the subject of tonight's meeting, the ball fields, are currently underway. Very generally speaking, we know that the ball fields are a tremendous community asset. What with the 50,000 local youth playing on them each year, from Manhattan Youth to downtown Little League, downtown soccer, downtown Giants, local schools, etc. And what we have worked with, I'm pleased to kind of update this committee as well, both with the Battery Park City Committee and Environmental Protection Committee with Alice and team, and the local league leaderships, Bob, Andrew Zelter from downtown Little League, downtown soccer, downtown Giants, etc. We, through a series of public meetings, we've had 4 now on the ball field resiliency project as it is, and we were able through those conversations to identify a solution that will, as best we can, minimize impact to the ball fields and to the local youth that play on them. So very briefly, what that means is we had at first kind of envisioned and talked through the idea of having a permanent protective barrier around the ball fields that would stand up for the foreseeable future and protect the ball fields against basically any storm that we can envision in this time and place. We also, at the request of the community, explored a somewhat different solution, which was, instead of being a permanent solution, what we're calling an interim solution. Interim being, we will have a good level of protection at the ball fields that will stand through until the North Battery Park City Resiliency Project and South Battery Park City Resiliency Project are complete. The idea there is that once you have the North and South complete, it basically compartmentalizes Battery Park City, so in the event of storm surge, you wouldn't have what you had last time, which, as you recall, interestingly enough, was not the ball fields being inundated from water coming over the west. It was water running down West Street and flooding the fields out from the back. Once the north and south are in place, the Battery Park City Ball Field Resiliency Project will be able to be scaled back, and you won't have these measures in place because the ball fields will be otherwise protected. So we're calling it an integral solution. What that means is it is roughly half the estimated cost of what the permanent solution would be. It allows us to complete it quicker, and it allows the impacts to be not as severe. So what that means is, and we've discussed this, while there is work, actually, Diana, if you don't mind, can we bring up our handy website? Diana and I know this website well, and for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Alice and I talk about it all the time too. You want to talk about chock-a-block. We have so much information on our resiliency webpage, including all the resiliency projects. But what I'll do for the sake of visual aid
to the internet.
is go to, that's right, our website, and then go to resiliency sustainability.
I know how to get
You
there.
know that.
We would never connect, we've never been connected to the
Giving
internet.
narrative for the folks who don't otherwise know.
Yeah, just take the A train.
Right.
Well, is the presentation from the other night up, by
Yes,
the way,
it is.
Nick? Okay, just
Naturally.
thanks.
Can I open one of these?
Yes, the Bowfields one, September 26, 2019, public meeting and presentation. Right. That one, yep. So this is the presentation that we last did with the Bowfields in September. You can scroll down, keep scrolling down, I'll show you which one we want to talk about. This is just kind of the idea about what we want to do. There's a schematic, if you keep scrolling down, you'll see a schematic, I'm sorry, I don't know which that's right there. So roughly speaking, what we're looking at now is that interim protection in blue around the outside perimeter of the fencing of the ball fields with two movable flood barriers with red that would allow for vehicular and other kind of maintenance entrance access. So the idea there is once this construction is underway, we anticipate a project duration of, let's say, 5-ish months. And what it would allow us to do is keep the ball fields accessible and available for folks to use them. Now, that's not saying there won't be portions of the ball fields that need to be cordoned off while the work is being done, obviously, because even though the protection is contemplated to be built outside the fence, there's still some stuff that needs to be staged inside, work vehicles, so on and so forth. But the fields themselves, we don't anticipate being shut down we don't anticipate them being shut down completely, and if portions need to be shut down, we're able to stage the work so as to have the ball field still accessible for the play. Timeline-wise, what we are hoping to do is we have the RFP out now for the general contractor to do the work. Those responses are due on February 28th. We'll have to go through the selection process. We would hope to start work later this year, 2020. I don't have an exact date, but when I have one, obviously we'll make it known. And then work would be the duration of around, let's say, 5 months or so. I know I've spoken with Andrew, who I see now, and Bob as well. The other thing I want to add is once we have the general contractor on board, we would obviously then look to convene the league leadership again to go through specifics about how best to minimize that work and impact league play as little as possible. So that's TBD, but I'd say within the next couple of months or so we'll have the contractor on board. Don't hold me to that, it'll be a little longer because we're still working with the city on permitting issues. Obviously, as you know, we want to make sure that's all set. But once we have the contractor in place, we'll be reconvening with the league leadership, the community board, and talk about how best to minimize approaches as we phase the work in. So, does that make sense?
Just a clarification.
Yes, sir.
So if this is interim, when does the permanent occur?
So the South Battery Park City Resiliency Project should be complete in 2022. Should break ground later this year and then can be complete in 2022. The North Battery Park City Resiliency Project should be complete in 2023, I believe it is. Diane, if you go back, sorry, to the main page. If you scroll up to south, yes, south should be, beginning 2020, end of 2022, right there. And then if you scroll down to where it says the north, right, should be begin in 2021 with completion in 2023. So this interim solution would be up for as long as is needed to complete both the north and the south projects.
And when those are done, you're gonna revisit this?
We would be able to take out kind of the steel walls and have yes.
And you have a plan that everyone's sort of happy with for the permanent?
Yeah, for the.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Just
Yeah,
wanna
I
make
really-
sure I'm
I
not
wanna-
speaking out of turn if
No,
I
no,
give a
no.
report.
It was one, and it was a really fulsome and valuable conversation to hear from the league throughout their series of meetings. I know Andrew specifically in the Downtown Soccer League. We really wanted to come to a decision as a community and say, look, we understand what you're saying. Are we comfortable as a community moving forward, knowing that if we have an interim solution, it's not going to protect against the full level that a permanent solution would, but we're trading that off against not having to have the fields, let's say, offline for a season. So, like anything else, it's a balancing act, and we're confident that the solution we've hit upon will provide a very robust level of protection without having to take the fields offline, which I know with the east side construction is a matter of concern.
Yeah.
And not a small one.
Fortunately for us, it's in board 3, but we're still concerned.
Right.
Just remind everyone when when the next Northern Resiliency Project presentation is by Battery Park City
So,
Authority.
I'm actually glad you asked that question. I just spoke with Lucian about it, I guess, on Friday. We're looking at the,
Seems so timely.
we don't have the date set yet, very roughly speaking, because I know we were talking about open dates on the community board calendar for February. I think we're looking at either the 26th or the 27th. I will get that note out this week, Alice, to the team.
Just curious,
We can
okay.
pick a night out, that's open, that's what we want to try and do. Once we get that out, that'll be public meeting number 2 on the wall,
It's separate from the committee meetings.
separate from the committee meetings, right?
Thanks.
So there were those black, rubber,
Yes,
plastic,
The muscle walls,
yeah, so they're gone now?
right.
So what were they for and why are they gone?
It's a very good question. There was muscle walls or
I
essentially.
like muscle walls, I haven't heard that
That's,
yet.
that's the commercial name.
Okay.
Picture, if you will, like HESCO barriers or Jersey barriers that were placed there, they get filled with water, weighted down and then covered off. That's what we were calling our temporary solution. Temporary being during Atlantic hurricane season, which runs through October 31st. That's the risk of having, obviously, a storm. We had those temporary measures there in case something happened. This was before the construction started on the building. But we're past hurricane season now, so we still have them. So if
But you just put them away
we put them
someplace.
away, right. If they're needed again for whatever reason, let's say the construction isn't done, it's not complete by the time next hurricane season comes, and we still anticipate them being done with the ball fields by the end of 2021. For whatever reason, obviously sometimes construction experiences delays, we still have them and we can redeploy them if need be. So basically, think in terms of 3 main words, which is the way I remember it: temporary, interim, permanent. The muscle wall solution was a temporary solution just to tide us over for that one hurricane season until Battery Park City ball field construction started on the interim solution. That interim solution carries us through until the north and the south project, which are permanent, are complete.
I'm sorry, could you just describe, thanks for asking that. I didn't realize that those had already gone away.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between interim and temporary?
Temporary was basically for just the season. It was just for this past fall to tide us over until ball field construction.
So
could
like
start.
from August to November, you
Whatever
had these
the-
things?
yeah,
What did this cost to have those in?
I think so, I don't know, I have a couple $100,000, I think it was.
A couple
Yeah,
of hundred thousand?
New York one did actually a really nice story on it. I can send you
Okay.
all. Actually,
Okay, just curious. And so now the interim is different how?
the interim is different because that's the actual solution that we've developed in consultation with the community.
And I
That
think it's
involves,
gonna be
that's,
higher,
that's
More
construction.
substantive.
right, and it's higher.
But it's still
Yeah.
temporary.
It's
It's
a
temporary
long-term
until those
Yes,
2 other
I guess you could
projects
say
are done.
long-term temporary,
Okay.
right.
Just
Temporary until the permanent solution is in place. I mean, maybe it's a matter of semantics, but it's intended to be not as much of a dig and not as much community impact as a permanent solution would be.
which would happen in 3 years, in 2023, you
Once-
said.
Once the north and the south are done, which are permanent projects, then you'll be able to pull back on the.
And that's 3 years hence.
Yes.
Okay, more or
Roughly.
less, right,
Yeah,
okay.
roughly until the north is complete.
Thanks.
Andy, oh, go ahead, Andy.
Nick, without committing you to a date, but
Yes.
if your timetable considers a contractor selected by end of Feb, if I understood, roughly, what's the earliest they could possibly start the project?
I don't want to say that
I'm not
it's
gonna
going to be
commit you to that,
selected by the
just-
end of February.
Right.
I'm saying from where we're sitting now, likely summer-ish. I know what you're thinking about downtown Little League.
Yeah,
It may end up being.
Yeah, he was thinking about me.
summer's great,
It
from
may-
this
it-
seat, I'm not
It
sure
may
that's
end
it.
up being that we, and again, we're just talking.
Yeah, I understand.
It may end up being that it end up the same Little League season. Doesn't mean it's going to
Impact that
unduly
much, yeah.
impact, because we're gonna try and phase the work. And the whole idea, again, of doing the interim as opposed to the permanent solution is, we don't wanna take the fields offline. We have to cordon off a section where work is being done, but it will still allow the leagues to be used. Obviously, the spring with the Little League and the fall with youth soccer and football being very heavily used seasons. And
So we
wanna
should,
be
we should
sensitive.
take this offline, but maybe we should have a conversation. As you know, we bring in a temporary fence for our season,
Yes.
which segregates the activity on the fields from sort of the last 15 feet.
Right, which is where, right.
I don't know if it makes any sense to keep that in place, but we can talk about that. I don't need it in place, I just don't know if it helps
Wonderful.
you guys at all.
Makes the kids feel better, they can hit the ball over it.
Is it as durable as
Tighter,
Hasco
tighter.
barriers?
What, the interim solution?
Yeah, I mean, is it, you know, because it's so much thinner than those Hasco barriers.
Yeah, because it's gonna be underground, it's gonna be foundation built, it's gonna be.
No, I meant the temporary, the
interim.
muscle,
Oh, the
the
muscle walls?
muscle walls.
Oh,
The muscle walls, as far as I understand, are, I'm not engineering, they are,
They'll be extinct.
I think they're
They're gone.
pretty good.
Okay. Just wondered if the city knew about them.
Oh, yeah, we did this, with the city as well. Right, because anything else requires obviously the requisite permits. But yeah, those were in place for essentially the fall season, because we knew the hurricane season was upon us, knock on wood, but we always wanted to make sure that we have all these, best laid plans, and then if we get hit with a storm, even while we're trying to bid out for the project, that doesn't really help anybody. So we wanted to make sure the fields were protected for the fall, even once the seasons are done. If something were to wipe out the fields, then we would knock everything offline for the spring, which we don't want to do. We want to make sure they remain available.
And not that this needs a plug, but I just think this is a great example of collaboration with all parties to get to a solution that works for most. May not work for all, but works for an awful lot.
Yeah. Any impact on the bikeway or walkway during the
No,
construction?
I don't know entirely for sure.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Again, the idea is.
Is
try
that
and
your
minimize it.
land if you wanted to?
It's a good question.
That's a
It's kind of-
state,
it's kind of a
that's
mess.
state.
It's state
It's
DOT,
state.
it's,
Right.
city DOT may have a part of it, it's.
No, it's not Hudson
it's
River
not Hudson
anymore.
River.
No, it was.
It used to be.
PCA.
It used to be.
It's state DOT, like, so Route 9A, the bikeway, that's all state DOT.
Right.
I think there's maybe a portion that's city DOT,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
working through the
yeah, yeah,
jurisdiction
okay.
issues.
But you don't think you're gonna spill over there?
As far as I know, I don't.
It's close though,
I don't
it's
know.
close.
We'll have a better sense once we have the final construction drawings. But anyway, yeah, the event is to try and minimize it best we
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
But the water's gonna spill over.
And Nick, not
think
a
you're gonna
DLL question or lead question, but just general inquiry. So
Yes.
the upper tier,
Yes,
obviously under construction, is there a timetable on?
that's the leak remediation project is, I have to confirm, I don't know.
Okay.
I meant to check today and I got pulled away on some other things. But, I wanna say spring-ish,
Really?
so.
Not quick.
Any other questions? Go.
Two of them. First, how high is the interim versus the permanent?
I think there's a slide, if you would go back to that, sorry,
The ball field or South Battery Park City?
ball fields.
Well, the permanent won't have anything at the ball fields.
Go to,
Sure.
When the north and south are done, the interim comes
Oh,
away
you're
from.
right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This one?
So we're just
Yes.
talking the interim.
Yeah.
so there's actually further down in the document, there's, again, this isn't exactly what it's gonna look like, but it'll give you a sense of, what it might look like.
These?
Yeah. So, in certain places it's lower because the grade you're starting to build from is higher. certain places where there's low points, you would need a higher, what we call height of intervention, which is the distance between where the grade is and where you have to get to protect from the flood.
Looks like about 6 feet at the height.
So at some points, it may be as high as, yes.
Depending on how tall those women are, yeah.
And there's a lot more detail, I think, if you scroll on through, but there's and again, these are the conceptual ideas. About as we go, you can see some of the grade differences.
Oh, wow.
You'll see someone standing there. So that's corner of Murray and West, and that's just some ideas about some of the things that it might look like. But it's interesting. It's an interesting project to work on, and we're looking forward to getting it done.
So my second question was with the partial loss of the East River Park ball fields, have you gotten inquiries?
You know what? Not that I'm aware of yet. Doesn't
Can you
happen.
go
That
back
doesn't
one
mean we
slide?
won't, but we're gonna have to.
I just want to see
balance this out.
something, yeah.
I would imagine that we would
I
like
have
to
a
get some
question.
more, because you're having those fields taken offline for a period of time, which made it even more important that our fields also didn't go offline, because then we would really be in a pickle.
I don't know how much capacity you have to accommodate this thing.
Right, you know, it varies by season.
Those kids did get up at 4 a.m.
Right, not
Shit.
games. They do have lights.
I hated those 8 o'clock games.
Parks has indicated that they are going to reprioritize permits for youth and schools. So what might be most impacted are sort of the for-profit and or adult leagues.
Well, that's
The other
good
thing
for me.
Parks is doing is that they are re-turfing a number of fields that, I won't say they haven't been usable, but they've been at times challenging to use because of the field conditions. So they are trying to re-turf some of the fields to extend their function in life, so that they can accommodate more spillover. So they just re-turfed Baruch, which had almost been unusable. There were big holes in the turf, flaps coming up, just making it dangerous to use. They re-turfed that, and it's spectacular. I think there's discussion about some other fields. I think they have a list, actually. You may know.
About the Bertram's fields, are they usable?
Bertram's usable. I mean, they have a dirt infield, so if it rains hard, it's challenging, but they're well built. They drain and they maintain them.
It's a big field too. Big.
It's big. It's primarily used for older, for sort of 14-year-olds and up.
Maybe they could try to.
I just have a quick question from that drawing. During the construction, old story, Letitia, who was your predecessor,
Yes.
fought very hard and asked me for my help on keeping the trees that are in the ball fields there. The Little Leagues wanted to cut them down, and so I was caught in between two levers. Do you anticipate any of those trees being removed?
There is a slide, I think, Diane, I just saw it, sorry, I'm not
Who from
as
Little
familiar as I
League?
once was. 'Cause it's been
David
a while.
Finer.
That's a
There's
long
a
time
slide
ago.
later on, I think, that shows some of the trees.
Yeah, those trees.
Inside, I don't know, actually, scroll further
Oh,
down.
here he comes, the lover of trees.
Scroll
He'll
further
tear you a
down.
new
See
one
that?
if you take those trees down.
Don't cut any
Jack.
trees down.
So,
So you'll
Sorry.
see on that slide,
Yeah,
you'll
yeah.
see the trees in the far, I guess what it is, the northeastern corner.
Yeah.
Impacted, and a couple of the trees at the southeastern corner.
Yeah.
With red circles.
those are some old
Yeah,
trees.
Some of those are gonna have to be taken out.
Why?
Resiliency project.
Why?
Old resiliency measures for the Battery Park City.
So, I don't know which those trees are. I'll take a look at them, but those are,
We're at the corner of.
no, I know
West
I
and
can
Warren.
see where they are, but they're different trees that were planted at different times, over the years. So, I think the ones that you're not removing are the older ones, quite frankly. But I can't tell you without going there.
Sorry, I was
You
late.
ready to join in?
Yeah. What do you mean for resiliency purposes? Talk to us in plain language. Why are you taking the trees away? There in the south and north.
I don't think they are taking many, but
Well, we're not really covering the south and north.
No, I mean on this map here.
It says they're removing the ones with the red circles.
Yeah.
They're
So
in the way of the barrier.
What's the reason?
So you wanna go through them?
Can we, maybe we can take it offline, because
Yeah.
we have a half an hour
Yeah, we just,
presentation.
we just.
About the trees,
Yeah.
talk about it?
About the
Yeah, we
resiliency
did.
Yeah, that
project
was-
that impacts.
we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, it's basically taking it all the way back to the beginning of the
It'll
conversation.
be coming up at the Environmental Protection Committee meeting
Make you
pretty
put it
soon,
in
so.
writing, Mark.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think that these agencies are always too quick to take trees away. It's short-sightedness. So I'm saying that for the record, and instead of thinking of some other options outside the box.
I mean, maybe you can look at it, it's, those are, if they are nice trees, and the authority were the people who saved it originally. So, if you can, take a look at it, I'm glad,
Would you be committed to come back with us after a second look to tell us?
I'm always happy to be here. We have the,
But will you bring this information back and then come back to us?
I can check on the
Okay.
particular trees.
Thank you.
Um,
So we'll follow up with him on that.
I can
Thank
check
you.
on.
Yeah, I mean, there's the issue of the trees.
Sorry I was
come up
late
in-
and got into this, but
In the
you know
Environmental
it's a passion for
Protection
me.
Committee, and I know
Yeah.
that's something that will continue to be discussed in detail in environmental protection.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the committee that's
Okay,
gonna
so-
do the.
Well, we still need comment
Discussions.
on it somehow. So.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I can follow
I've
up
got
with
it
you
noted.
individually,
He's
Mark.
just keeping this committee informed, and that we
Thank you.
appreciate that.
It's a
All
good
right,
design.
let's try to wrap it up. Go ahead.
Just a quick note, heard the conversation and the presentation from last week, and I did a little double checking. Whatever's London playing trees will not last through salt water nor high heat, which we expect. So if those are London planes, don't
They
even
made
think
it
about
last
the
time.
fact of trying to spend money to save those things.
Well, they're still there. They've been there.
They may be still there, but they're not gonna be there for too much longer. Plus, the lifespan on these things were about 40, 50 years.
I don't have a crystal ball. I just know they're there.
Okay,
We should look at the issue.
Nick, thank you.
Thank you,
Continue the good work. We
Of course.
appreciate what Battery Park City contributes to our community. Thank you.
Guys, thanks for having me. We'll be back anytime.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move it along. Do we have the Parks Department on Finn Square? All right, we're gonna do a quickie presentation on an art installation.
Hello, my name is Naomi Rodriguez. I am a public art coordinator with the Parks Department. I'm just gonna pass some information out for you guys to see.
You?
This is a temporary art exhibit at Finn Square. I'll come back around.
Thank you.
And it's by,
Made the nasty remarks.
it's by a world-renowned sculptor, Manuel Ferreiro Diaz. It's pretty
Thanks for the heads up.
straightforward.
My mom used to say I was clairvoyant. They should look at
I'm sure they do.
They're too quick.
You pass one
Too
more
quick
down?
to cut them.
Yes, I'm coming around.
it. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there a PowerPoint or no?
And it is a geometric shape,
Thank you.
and it won't be blocking any crosswalks. 3 feet of clearance on all sides, and it'll be up for a year. And it won't be anchored into the concrete because of the weight, so it won't obstruct the existing pavement. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Everyone knows where Finn Square is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Is it right back?
Is it?
What?
It's on Google Maps.
Doesn't
I
matter.
found it.
Isn't that one there?
West Broadway.
Where, give us the street location of Finn Square?
South of the
South of
Franklin
Franklin.
Street Station.
I got it.
Subway station.
Thank you.
It's that
Just
little
to,
triangle there.
So
Great.
Barrack and West Broadway, so it'll be right at the top of the triangle.
as opposed from that other triangle that we spend time on.
Yeah, which I want to bring up, because this is exactly the same thing, and now that we have the Department of Parks. I'm sorry, so first, when was the last time Finn Square got a sculpture or piece of art
It's
installed
been
there?
a couple of years at least, 2.
I have a lot of questions, but, Could you clarify, at least for me and probably others on the committee, what is the relationship between the Green Streets program and, forgetting the art, but just the Department of Parks, who's responsible for the upkeep of Finn Square? It's in terrible shape. I know that it's come up before this community board and this very committee, I suspect, numerous times as to just how bad the shape is. And there is a small group that tries to take care of it, that's actually, I know, been in touch with me about it. Where are you at with actually just trying to maintain that space? Who's responsible for the maintenance of the space beyond putting a sculpture in front of it? It's very irregular, I'm sure you know, and the sidewalk is cracked and such, and it's an important space, and it brings to mind one that this community is very involved in advocating for, which is just to the east of it, which is the Barnett-Newman Triangle. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am aware of the conditions at Finn Square. What I can do is see who can answer those questions. Unfortunately, my office is not responsible for that. We only focus on the art part of it and not on the maintenance of the Green Streets or the squares.
Well, I would really appreciate it if you could get back to the community board through Diana Sweetai, because it's a really critically important issue, which is, how are these green streets being maintained? And additionally, for example, the historical sign markers, I don't know the relationship of the Finn historical sign, but I can tell you that, this is something I wanted to bring up, that the Barnett-Newman sign is no longer there at the Barnett-Newman Triangle. And so when you are talking about adding sculptures, you have to be sensitive to historical signage that was originally planned for it and was part of it. And so in a difference to maintenance, if we could have that, addressed, I think we need to get a handle on our pocket parks and, a little bit more aggressively in this community board, I would argue.
I would just a suggestion, we could consider adding Finn Square next year to our capital budget request if it needs work. And as far as signage,
Maintenance.
there's a district cabinet monthly meeting where they meet with the agencies, and that might be a good opportunity to ask them. And
Yeah, if you have that kind of checklist of items, send them to me, and we could coordinate directly with our liaisons on those kinds of maintenance issues. And we have Jamal here from the Parks Department, who was at our district service cabinet meeting this morning.
So I'm the district manager, so Finn Square is supposed to go on the capital, like right now, I don't have an exact date, so I can't really answer when is the exact date, but I know that the sidewalks, I know that definitely needs to be taken care of, because it's in a state of just, it needs to be repaired,
So, and also, are you aware of Barnett-Newman Triangle and the fact that this community board is trying very hard to get investment into that park as well? That's another pocket park that's just to the east of it.
Is that Parks Department?
Yeah, I think it's definitely.
Or DOT?
It's both.
I think that's more a DOT than.
Well, I guess that's what's a little, can you explain the relationship with Green Streets, the DOT, and the New York City Parks Department on these pocket parks? We're constantly finding that one department says it's the others, and I think they're both together, right? Is that not?
No, DOT, they have several sites that they maintain, and then we have sites that we take care of. So a lot of times, I have to get clarification with this, because I think the green streets, and don't quote me, because the green streets, like the sidewalks, are supposed to be repaired by DOT, but I'm not really sure I can get that information on that.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Joe, go.
I'm a little confused by these pictures. Are there no trees here, or is this one tree blocking all the trees, or is this two different places?
No, those are the same places.
I know.
It's a low tree, but the sculpture actually won't interfere with the tree line. So it'll be far away from it.
This shows a lot of trees. I don't see that many trees.
It's just one line of trees.
Okay.
One narrow line. Yeah, it's really skinny.
Well,
And it's a sidewalk on either side of the triangle. Yeah, I know where it
where do
is.
those trees come from?
You're not gonna cut the trees down, huh?
No.
That wasn't,
I just do.
All right, and
that
what are the
wasn't my
dates for
question.
this
But,
piece again?
February 3.
To the 2nd of February of next year, so only 1 year.
1 year, got it. Okay.
What are you gonna do with the stainless steel after it's done?
so, the material is stainless steel?
Yes.
Do you have angle, there's only showing one angle here, a photo of the other side?
It is not, well, actually, I might have one.
Nice.
And what's the height of the base?
83.
So.
From the floor to the top corner?
It's a total measurement that you have on your paper.
How many inches? Tell me how many inches.
80 high.
80 inches.
No,
Basically
no,
50.
from the base, from the base to the corner, this here.
100 centimeters.
No, it doesn't. Oh, yeah.
It's all anchored together, so there's no separate.
80 inches
About,
height.
right.
That's 80 inches?
Well, that's what it says.
No, 80.
You're not understanding what I'm saying. Can you come here and?
Yeah, this. He wants to know this, right here.
200 centimeters.
You want to know so people can jump up on it.
This in here, this height. What is this height?
Yeah.
Right, so we only have the measurements for the entire thing. for
About.
To half.
Mark, is there a concern?
80
Yeah, because
centimeters.
it's about it's a stainless steel corner that's about the height of like 5 and 6 year olds' heads.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried
Yeah,
about.
so
These corners.
that's my concern.
They run into it.
Yeah.
These
Oh.
corners and little kids.
Right,
does
well,
that say,
it's
Lost
But
been
it's, but it's
exhibited
protecting
in various
them from running
parts
into the
around
tree
world
behind it.
without any incident. So.
You should be president.
What are you around the world? It's good.
You're not.
Connect.
This
Couldn't-
is New York,
Yeah.
that's great. But this is New York City where kids jump on everything.
They're definitely gonna like it. They're gonna jump on it. Nothing you can do about it.
So a question I have is that those corners, can they be
They won't do it twice.
maybe affixed with just one of those rubber things you get at Home Depot or something?
Yeah,
protect.
make it 20.
I'll put some duct tape on
We
the
should
corner.
have helmets for the kids when they come around.
Yeah. So, if that insults the sculptor insults sensibility, then that's his problem.
All right, bear in mind again that these are just for FYI. We don't have any role, we don't
Twice
pass
the bill.
resolutions, so I think we should try to wrap this up, but go ahead.
The artist
Um,
cell phones these
Tell everyone who you are, so everyone knows.
Hi, my name is Nasreen. I am a fellow at Community Ward 1. I just have a question about the area of, the total area of Finn Square. Do you happen to know what that is?
I do not know.
The football field.
Can you get back to me, Naomi?
For the time, square foot?
Yeah, for the square footage of Finn Square as a whole.
Well, actually, I was gonna say, you can. Tiny.
And whoever's getting
Yeah, I
back to
know
us
that.
on the clarity, crystal clear as to who is responsible for the sidewalks, who is responsible for the maintenance of the park itself, the green space itself,
For Finn
and who
Square.
is for all the Green Street projects in Lower Manhattan.
Hey, can this spin?
Okay, just
Jamal,
for Finn Square.
Jamal, I'll follow up with you on that
So
one.
we've gotta get a handle on this.
For the maintenance, she's responding for the maintenance part.
I think the agencies go like this.
Yeah, but it's this business has got to, yeah.
Hey, if this spins, we can make this spin. It'd be like the cube and ask the square. That'd be cool. If you could spin it, kids would jump on it and
Okay.
fly into the fucking traffic.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing.
What's this
I
one?
love it. Next,
I'm sorry?
next Paul, moving right along.
Naomi, thank you.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.
Okay,
Take tomorrow off.
all right, let's move it along. Item 3 is mine, so that will be quick. Delury Square, that's a park improvement that we spent some time on.
Last year.
The update on that is that it's,
Please remind me where
that's on Fulton Street, right near Southbridge Towers.
On the corner of Fulton and Gold.
Right.
Right.
It's a park named for an old sanitation union boss.
And it was controversial last year because there was
What a
concern
king he
that it
was.
was that some of the money that was being raised by that the council member was giving was going to more of a private use for Southbridge rather than allowing the park to remain open, which was its original plan. Just
That was
filling
true.
everyone in.
All right, we'll leave it at
That's
that.
completely true.
What, that the money was going to Southbridge?
No, that's
All right, all right, all right.
You must have heard that wrong.
Yes. You did.
Right.
All right, the the update is that we did go through a rather lengthy review process and everyone had their say in it. Anyway, the bottom line is that construction is to begin on or about February 10th on that space. And it's, how long was it supposed to take?
5 years.
I'll have to check my notes on that.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
That's the place where we were talking about they were cutting some of the wires so people could gain access to the inner park, is that correct?
Cutting wires?
Went over that.
The fence, the wire fence, so people could get inside
There
the
was
park.
discussion about
And-
which areas would remain closed off and just for
that's my
planting
question.
rather than
What-
for the public.
Will it be the way it is now, or are they changing that?
Uh,
Now it's just planting in the middle.
I think they might have opened a little bit more of the park, but much of it
You'll
hasn't
find out
changed.
soon.
Can we get an update on the design, the final design that was approved? Because I think we never heard that.
No, we did approve.
No, but we never heard before construction, there was we had a resolution, but we never heard what was the final design.
Right.
I don't
Never
know
saw,
that.
rather, the final
Gotcha.
design.
Refer to the email.
So it'd be helpful to see it before they start constructing it.
Didn't
I
hear about
probably
it
did
because
make
it
a
wasn't,
copy of it, actually.
it didn't
One
want to
other-
jive with the
But if you
resolution.
haven't, let me know.
Paul,
Yes, I'm listening.
Peckslip Park was supposed to be worked on in January, am I correct?
That's my next report.
I don't see it here.
Right.
That's
It
why I
wasn't
brought it up.
originally on the agenda, but since we're updating park projects, Peckslip is indeed scheduled to start a week from today, on the 27th of January.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
And that one, I do have the completion date, which is early 2021. And Diana is looking for
Here it is.
the update on how long delivery is supposed to take.
I don't have it in my email. Jamal, do you know
It's
uh,
okay.
how long the Delury Square construction is supposed to take off the
What?
top of your head?
I know. Well, I had,
We don't worry
that was
about how long.
sent to me, but you could have it if you want.
In New York City, where you,
Just figure it's 5 times as long as it would be
I don't know
any
that
place
that
else,
drawing will do you
and
that
10
much
times the
job.
cost.
Is this the final?
I assume so, but I'm not sure.
So,
that project's been at least 10 years.
Okay,
Colin, I have a question. Will the construction for either of these change the size or the total area of the park?
no, not to my knowledge. The size, well, Peckslip is being modified, certain areas are being changed around, but overall, I think it's pretty much the same size of what it was.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry to beat this horse on, well, I'm not really beating it yet, but Delury Square reconstruction, I think that the community should see the plans prior to,
I
sort
can
of.
get the final plans.
Yeah, because I think there was a great deal of interest in having that fountain, for example, be more accessible. People could then overlook the northern end of that area, et cetera. And it was quite a lengthy, I recall, resolution that had very specific things that were agreed on after many meetings. I mean, it wasn't without time spent, so I would hope that we could do that. But if this is beginning February 27th, I'm not sure if that happened in the next meeting, or,
What's the date I
Did you
have there?
say-
February 10th.
sorry, so that's even sooner.
Actually, let me hold on to that so I
So
can
what do
give
you
the
think?
accurate date.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that we want to delay the construction.
No, I'm not,
Because, we want our parks to come along. These are good news reports, that renovations. I know there were differences of opinion, but we could certainly get an update for you and the committee as to what the final design will be.
Yeah, just to
And-
see where we landed on all of
Yeah,
that.
see where we landed.
We'll do that, no problem.
thank
Go ahead, Wayne.
On a unrelated note, I was just wondering if we had an update with how the park renovation is coming together in front of King's Pharmacy.
Bogardus
That's
Drive.
what I was just gonna
Shit.
ask.
Yeah,
Bogardus.
because that one
Bogardus
is,
Drive.
The endless Bogardus.
Right. Just wondering if
What,
anybody
what was
knew
the
more.
original completion date?
It's been delayed. I think I heard
Why don't we
May
wa-
this morning. I'll have to double check with Lucian. He works with DDC on
forget
those
about
projects,
completion
and they
dates.
did give him a date this morning.
It's New York
There are
City.
continued delays, and Marcia Guido is the DDC liaison there. And she said the account for all of the delays is the utility work. They keep finding things that are unexpected. I'm pretty sure she said May. Let me confirm with
I
Lucian
find that
tomorrow.
very
and I
hard
can
to
let you
And
believe.
know.
she
Walking
puts
by it
out
every
a
day.
weekly update that
Yeah.
maybe you can ask to be on the mailing
I'll
list
get
for.
it if you
She's
want.
very good, the
Okay.
liaison. So, I don't know, can
Let
you
me know
give
if they're
him
fine oil
the
under there.
contact information to get on
Who
that
wants
mail
it?
list? I
Richard.
think
Oh, of
Richard.
course.
What's astonishing to me is that they have dug that park up at least 2, I think 3 times, just redone the work.
No,
My
that-
God.
That
At
is,
least-
a bad-
I'm shocked.
it's.
I'm talking to
right.
George.
Yeah, look, we don't want to shock.
Gambling.
Delayed projects in New York City, yes, I know.
It's not even-
All right,
Thank you.
okay, so I think we covered that. So we are now up to item 4. By the way, item 5 has been canceled, just FYI. Hudson River Park was not ready to present, so they'll presumably come back next month, I guess. But in any event, let me turn this over to Andrew Zelter to give you the update on what's going on with Pier 40, and I'm sure Bob might have a few words to say about that.
So
Well, maybe not. Okay.
Just before we get to Pier 40, quick updates on activities that are happening in somewhat adjacent parks, not necessarily in Community Board 1, but adjacent parks that are critically important to, in particular, field infrastructure for Manhattan Youth, Downtown Little League, Downtown Soccer League. So,
Mafia.
BPC, we had a discussion, so I think everyone's up to speed on that. Gansevoort Peninsula, I'll circulate these. There was a meeting with the Greenwich Village Waterfront and Parks. This is what I believe, likely to be the final design plan. Graham, I don't know if you were at the meeting.
I was.
They largely focused on the southern portion and making that beach and other activities more accessible. So the original design had some what were barriers, largely for resiliency purposes. I think they've figured out other ways to address resiliency without closing off activities to the southern portion, which is that beach area where you see kayak and south access. So very comprehensive, multi-purpose plan in terms of field infrastructure. It is providing a ball field that will be used by, I'm sure, many communities.
So the community was happy with this generally?
My impression is they addressed a lot of the issues that were raised by the community, and it seems to be a plan that's largely embraced by many. I'm sure there's some detractors.
Well, like anything else, right?
Where's the
It's not
art
gonna please
piece?
everyone.
The art piece is sort of between the beach and the water. Actually, I think part of it might actually be in the front.
Mostly in the water.
It is mostly in the
On the
water.
south
Okay.
side.
What exactly is a river gym?
I may not be able to answer all the questions.
Basketball court.
It looks like sort of outdoor general recreation, may have some, like under the East River
Right.
FDR,
Oh, I
that might be
know.
equipment.
It's just so stupid sort of,
Those
Exercise
outdoor
on.
exercise.
Yes.
Those are nice.
Stick on
they
nets,
they
let's have it all.
shortened
Good.
the dog run to put that in.
Is the understanding here, Andrew, that this will flood and that's just the way it's gonna be?
Right, that was my question, is it being elevated or? how is
Only a
it-
little bit, it will flood. It is designed to flood.
There are resiliency features to try and act as an impediment or a deterrent, but it's not an all-inclusive resiliency protection measure.
What are they, the ones that are supposed to be an impediment?
Again, I don't know if it's changed. There were some rock formations that were sort of put into the southern portion in particular. I don't know what they have along the,
Oh, I can speak to
Eastern
the
or western
southern
edge.
end. So of course, the touchy subject is the beaches on the beach, is just a standing pit. What you have on the southern end was riprap with essentially a ramp going down sort of tangentially into the water. And then there was a discussion, and that is the kayak launch. And how it works at high tide and low tide will be interesting. The surface was subject to debate, because surfaces can be rough on kayaks and people's feet. And the other issue was that they were originally going to put riprap along the south side,
and then it was asked that they instead put the sort of large steps so you could sit there and now whether you will be able to get your toes wet, it's probably a no. And also whether people can get their dog to play in the water is also a no. Whether they end up actually putting a fence at the top of that ramp is open to debate.
So that's southern edge access, that sort of bench?
This is sort of there's a series of stepping large concrete blocks that make sort of stepping stones that go down into the water. Obviously below the high tide mark they will be slippery, right, and also the ramp will get slippery below the high tide mark. They are using a synthetic plastic surface for the ramp to try and mitigate that.
So I would suggest if there's a strong interest to consider attending the CB2 Waterfront and Parks. They're getting into this in a level of detail. I was not at that meeting. This is the current design plan that was posted. There will be more discussion, I'm sure, around some of the fine tuning.
I'm curious about their asphalt, you know, or not, what do you call it, not asphalt, their turf, their ball field turfs. You know, if Nick is spending, you know, all this, we're worried about the ball fields.
Oh, so it's
You know,
a
flooding,
synthetic material.
if this is gonna flood,
Yeah.
I wonder what that's gonna be. Because, you know, that's, if it's gonna flood, you know, remember,
Yep.
I mean, you've experienced all of that. They have a different design in mind.
No, I think they're going to have drainage underneath, but if it floods, it's potentially the same issue. Now, I can't speak to, I don't know where they landed on the resiliency here. My belief is this side is more resilient, the west edge.
The west edge is a steel bulkhead. The north edge is where they're going to put, is a riprap where they're going to put in some wetland areas. It's actually fairly sheltered from wave action. The south edge was riprap, but now they're putting in these giant steps. Again, it's got fairly high wave action on that south edge. There is a low tide beach on the south edge, which they're actually kind of getting rid of, but that's just it. The ball field is got a 1% slope coming down from the middle. It is designed to drain, and they're more concerned about rain. The Little League people were concerned about snow removal, and the trust is they don't do that. And that was a touchy subject because that can mean that the fields are closed for a couple of weeks as the snow compacts to ice. It is what it is. The other issue is it's a very windy place at certain times of the year, very nasty cold. And again, the Little League people asked for a dome, seasonal, and the trust said no. The other thing is that the only sort of changing area of facilities are a relatively small public restroom.
So I don't think we necessarily need to debate the pros and cons of this. This was meant just to circulate this. I think the venue for doing that is really at the CB2.
Right,
Yeah,
we
but
have no
it
jurisdiction.
just brings up an
Well,
important
we have
issue
input.
that, you know, it would be Pier 40 or a few blocks south on Pier 25 or Pier 26 in our community board, but all facing the same question is, and a very inconsistent answer, which is that here in the Hudson River Park Trust, we're told that our money will, I mean, not our money, but I don't know whose money, will be paying for this to be redone at times of flood. Whereas in Wagner Park, further south, and just over here in Rockefeller Park, the Battery Park City Authority, of course, is raising things and putting in barriers. And so I guess, who does pay for when this floods, who pays for that to be fixed? Just curious.
It's under the jurisdiction of Hudson River Park Trust.
FEMA paid the last time.
That's what I thought.
I can speak to that. So FEMA paid the last time, but they won't pay again.
Right.
And
That's
the
what-
lesson that the trust learned is that all their gear was not flood proof. So supposedly they've used all that FEMA money to make everything flood proof. Supposedly anything they built since is flood proof. They are not, however, interested in being a protective barrier to inland areas.
But the areas we're talking about in our community board or in the ones north of us are supposedly flood-proof, so that the cost wouldn't be exorbitant.
Officially.
Just trying to get a handle on it.
Well, and this is the whole story about the, you know, the Army Corps of Engineers the answer is they'll be responsible ultimately for this section. This is in every model with Army Corps of Engineers, this section is included.
Right.
This is the 3% model, you know, like, even if it's only 3% protected, like Canal Street area. in that 3%, but that could be 50 years from now.
I don't think it's accurate to form an impression that resiliency hasn't been baked into this. There are resiliency measures, they
no.
might not be up to the standard we're looking for, or that we think makes sense. So anyway, all right, that's
Pier 40.
So Pier 40, if you've been following the press, I have no other insider information, but I'm not sure if everyone has followed the press or is making sense of what has happened. But we had previously reported to this committee and elsewhere that there was an effort to amend the Hudson River Park Act to expand the permitted commercial uses on Pier 40. When the act was promulgated, it included language that the park needed to be self-sufficient primarily from a maintenance perspective. And as the park has expanded and built out, maintenance costs have gone up. Pier 40 and its parking operations have been a very significant portion of revenues for maintenance, and it's no longer keeping pace with an expanded maintenance budget as the park has expanded. The current uses under the Act permit things such as retail, entertainment, and there have been 2 prior RFPs that have brought forward very large-scale bulk projects that the community rejected, full stop. There was a task force formed about 2.5, 3 years ago with an objective of trying to find out what might be palatable to the community in terms of expanding permitted uses in a project that might work, which would bring in revenues, but at the same time create more open, passive, and recreational space on Pier 40. Where this ultimately landed was a proposal to expand permitted uses to include commercial office space on the pier. And what was ultimately put forward by way of a proposed amendment was not only permitted office space, but restrictions on what that office space might include. So 700,000 square feet, up to 8 stories, and in conjunction with that, increasing park space from currently 50% of the footprint to 65% of the footprint. That went up to Albany for approval. At somewhat of the 10th or 11th hour, there was a letter that was sent to Albany suggesting that the governor reject the amendment. Interestingly enough, on the basis that it did not go far enough in terms of the footprint and scale of project that would generate the revenue needed by Hudson River Park.
Who sent that letter?
Gottfried was the sponsor of the letter and largely representing interests of Community Board 4. Community Board 4 feels that it has shouldered the burden of the revenue generating activities in its community district at the sake of building out parks and other community activities. So they didn't want a 75% project on Pier 40. They wanted something that generated 100% of what the park had defined as its need. What came back from the governor's office was a rejection on the proposed amendment. It was not framed, interestingly enough, around the letter that was received, but rather that Pier 40 has served as an invaluable asset to the community from a recreational perspective and should not be the site of a commercial project. What came out has been a topic that's been very, very long-standing in terms of the Hudson River Park conversation, which is Pier 76. That's the tow pound. It was pledged that that would be turned over to the trust for park uses. I believe in the governor's statement, he suggested that perhaps that's an appropriate site for a commercial project. Understandably, CB4 is on record pushing back, saying all you've done is now put the largest revenue generating proposal in our district. That's the last I've heard. I've not explored further conversations. Graham, maybe you have
So I go to every meeting where Hudson River Park is on the agenda, CB4, CB2, CB1, obviously. So I did go to the CB4 meeting about Pier 76, which was about 3 months ago, and that has to do with the fact that the NYPD is looking for a new place to put a tow pound. There's a regulation going back to the Bloomberg era that requires that every borough have a tow pound. You can't have to go to the problem is, the 76 not only is the tow pound, it's also used when the UN is in session for some special toys that the NYPD has. And there's also an NYPD repair shop there. So they're looking for a space somewhere in Manhattan where they can put the tow pound. To make that fit, they would have to use like a computerized garage system, but it would still be big, and there would be NIMBY issues and other things. So they have a $2 million study currently in progress, looking around to find that
Which
spot,
country we
maybe
are.
in Europe. It's probably not gonna work, right? In which case the NYPD, they're gonna say, well, we've got nowhere to move, unless you decide that if your car gets towed in Manhattan, it gets towed somewhere else, which is a whole different problem. So that's the state of Pier 76.
So
There's
the-
a NYPD repair shop on 155th Street,
They'll
the
probably
west side.
move that
Yeah.
there. The other thing is, honestly, I've been to every CB4 meeting, and the issue of air rights does not come up. The concern that Godfrey wrote, I've not heard. And it is true, the trust does screw over CB4 in many different ways, and they take longer to build piers, they are cheaper when they build them, they outsource them for special events much more often, they have all these things. But you have to understand that in CB4, almost everybody lives many blocks away from the park. There's like a whole, line of industrial block. So you go to those meetings and they're really looking inland. And they're not concentrated, and it's changed a little in the last couple of years, but this issue has not come up. And their far more problematic issue is the High Line, and how that's transforming their community, not Hudson River Park.
So the governor has further invited the trust to put forward additional amendments or suggestions as to how to address this. It seemed to be specific to what do you think you can do on Pier 76. Don't know where that stands, and you could also somewhat read into rejecting the amendment at Pier 40 and proposal to look at Pier 76 as though if for whatever reason, and the reasons you mentioned, Pier 76 doesn't come through, people are going to be looking back at Cuomo, okay, this hasn't worked, how are we going to address Pier 40? And that then gets folks like Glick and others who have long said the city and state need to figure out the financial solution here, not the trust or development.
Well, the governor did say in the
Yes,
letter,
yes,
the city and state
yes,
should
yes.
fund some portion,
Yes.
significant
Yes.
portion of this.
That's for me, I read that, the way I see this playing out, and I'm gonna ask this meeting at our Hudson River Park Advisory Committee when there are other people around, but the way I see this is a win
Yeah.
for if you're the parent of I was saying this to Paul in the elevator, if you're the parent of a 10-year-old child, or you're a member of the Village Community Boathouse, and now they're just gonna take Pier 40 and renovate it, right? And then, which is on the table, and they're gonna give money to the trust to operate their park, which is I think Tom Fox had been writing about it in Cranes, that they should just fund it and keep Pier 40 the way it is, do whatever you're gonna do with 76. But I think, and I'd like to hear from the leagues themselves, but if you're a league using Pier 40 and a parent of a 10-year-old, it sounds to me like they're not going forth with development on Pier 40 because it was the trust that rejected the amendments that was passed by the legislature. They said it wasn't enough. So since it wasn't enough, the governor rejected the legislation and said, okay, if you're not going to give the trust what they want, I'm going to reject your legislation. The trust board is a very politically powerful board, and they said this doesn't work for us. That was clear. They said it in meetings. So now we're at a point where I think the trust is going to get some money for those, and they're going to have to figure out what to do with 76 and 40. It's going to be an interesting 6 months, but if they didn't do anything there, because they're putting on new turf in Pier 40 as we speak. They're fixing up the green space. So if you're a parent of a 10-year-old and this gets delayed 5 years, hey, my kid's playing at Pier 40.
I think
He'll be at Dartmouth in 5
I
years.
think a lot of people who have followed this see this as the best possible outcome.
Yes.
If it ends
That's
up
what I'm
that the
asking.
city and state step up with
Right.
funding and you don't do
We've
any.
been saying
Yes.
that, we've been saying that for decades.
We'll see if that
We-
happens.
Everyone's, that's
Yeah,
what's reelected
The
Deborah
state
Gregg.
has a $6 billion budget deficit. I don't know
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
already know.
So good.
Put money into the park this year.
What?
Well, they have a $6 billion budget deficit. It might be
Yeah,
tough
but
to
I don't
get,
think it's
a
that
lot of
much
out of
money.
them this year.
I don't think it's that much money they have to come up with. It's not
We shall
like,
see.
maybe they.
What are the status of
Bottom line is
the
more to
piles?
come on this, we don't know.
Any-
All we know is that
No, that's
the
why I
plan
never
that was in the works is not happening.
Any status of the piles?
Just in progress. I mean,
They're still replacing.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, that's been underway for quite
Yeah,
some
it's-
time.
okay.
They're
And the estuarium?
on 26?
Yeah.
Don't have an update.
Well-
I mean, other than the announcement we all saw.
Oh,
26?
Yeah, go ahead.
They're, the trust is moving forward with an RFP to get a.
Again.
It's on their website.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought
Okay.
everyone had that announcement, but
Yeah,
maybe not.
yeah.
no, I
To
don't.
do the infrastructure.
To do a design, to do a kind of conceptual design, and they're expecting that to begin. They haven't gotten bids yet, but they have gotten bids and they're in the process of selecting.
So Alice, they've moved off of the discussions they were having with a potential partner. They
Yeah,
haven't
that
raised
we
the money,
knew,
so
right.
now they're working with their own.
Right,
the monies
right,
they
that
had
we got, I was
identified.
wondering from
Okay.
there where,
Anyone with a home aquarium system could make a few bucks
There's a
here.
design
so there's an
project.
RFP out for designers for that.
Correct.
Terrific.
And they have bids.
They have
Right?
bids already.
They
Wow,
have bids.
moving right along.
They have bids.
So Paul, I'm very dedicated. Today's my birthday, and I'm actually here.
Oh, happy birthday.
So I'm going to dinner now. I gotta go home and change.
Oh, thanks for the day.
Oh, you had to save
You're
the
getting a
trees.
tree for
You
your
had to
birthday.
save the trees. See?
All right.
With the Lorax, right? Is that the Dr. Seuss book, the Lorax?
Flip the seesaw images.
I get all my.
Oh, right. One last quick item, sorry, before I forget. We did get a notice from the Howard Hughes folks today that they wanted everyone to know about some seesaws that they installed on Pier 17 that they think will be appealing to
Nice.
That's
a lot of
I
people.
love the seesaw.
So they are different
Obviously,
and
for something large.
unusual.
Isn't that the area where the, wait a minute, Paul,
There's
where
no
is that?
salt.
Oh, outside, oh, it's
17.
inside.
only
But
like
did they have,
save
is
half the
there
money.
a skating rink on the roof still?
That's on the other side.
But
When
it's
are
up,
those
Wanna go on
gonna
with
be wet? I mean, they're not gonna be there forever.
What, the seesaws?
Right.
Yes, I did make note of that somewhere. Oh, here.
you like,
But Paul, you should make an announcement, community board members. Friday night is our annual community board party at Pier. This,
Not this Friday.
what Friday is it?
Yeah, the 31st.
you were going
Okay,
to
the
Whoa.
31st.
We should make an announcement, only a correct one.
Is it that, this?
No, it's not.
31st.
Better get the right one. All right, by the way,
Well, I'm glad I brought it up. I
It
would've
might have been a one-person party there.
the answer on the seesaws is they're there through the end of March, and it's open 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., and supposedly the nighttime is the nicest time to see it.
It
Why
is.
is it temporary?
Okay.
Everything's temporary.
That's it. We adjourned?
I think that's it. Thank you, folks.
Thank God I brought up the party.